The sky over Seoul burned orange as the Vorthak ships descended like black clouds. 12-year-old Jinwoo Park pressed his face against the cold concrete wall of the underground tunnel. His younger sister Nari gripped his hand so tightly, her nails dug into his skin. "Stay quiet," whispered Hyunwoo Kim from beside them. The adult resistance fighter had found them 3 days ago when their parents died in the bombing. Now he was all they had left in this dying world. Above ground, the sounds of laser fire echoed through the tunnel entrance. The Vorthak soldiers were getting closer. Their heavy boots made clicking sounds on the broken streets. Jinwoo had learned to recognize that sound. It meant death was coming. 3 years had passed since the aliens first arrived. They came in, massive ships that blocked out the sun. At first, humans tried to fight back with jets and missiles. The weapons bounced off the alien ships like raindrops. Within months, every major city on Earth was destroyed or captured. The Vorthak were tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces looked like angry masks with glowing red eyes. They spoke in harsh clicking sounds that hurt human ears. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to enjoy causing pain. Jinwoo remembered the day they took his parents. The aliens had set up camps where they forced humans to work building strange machines. His father had tried to hide some food for the family. The Vorthak guards caught him and made everyone watch as they killed him slowly. His mother died 2 weeks later from sadness and exhaustion. Now only scattered groups of humans remained free. They hid in sewers and abandoned buildings like rats. Most had given up hope. But some like Hyunwoo still fought back when they could. "We need to move," Hyunwoo said softly. "The supply depot is only 2 blocks away. If we can disable their power generators, the whole sector will go dark. Other resistance cells can attack while they are blind." Jinwoo nodded, but his stomach felt tight with fear. At 12, he was small for his age, with messy black hair and intelligent dark eyes. But something made him different from other children. He could understand machines in ways that amazed adults. When he looked at alien technology, he saw patterns and connections that others missed. The 3 of them crawled through the tunnel toward the surface. The air smelled of smoke and death. When they reached the exit, Hyunwoo peered out carefully. The street was empty, but burning vehicles cast dancing shadows on the walls. "Run to that building!" Hyunwoo pointed to a collapsed store across the street. "Stay low and move fast!" They ran together. Nari stumbled once, but Jinwoo pulled her up. Her 8-year-old legs could barely keep pace. They reached the building and ducked inside through a broken window. The Vorthak supply depot sat 1 block ahead. It was a large metal structure with glowing blue lines running across its surface. 2 alien guards stood at the entrance. Their weapons looked like twisted metal rods that sparked with electricity. "How do we get past them?" Nari whispered. Jinwoo studied the building carefully. The blue lines were power conduits, he realized. They fed energy from underground cables up to the main systems. If someone could access the junction box at the base of the building, they could cut all power at once. "I can do it," he said quietly. "Those lines connect to a central hub near the back wall. I can crawl around and short-circuit the whole system." Hyunwoo looked at him with surprise. "How do you know that?" "I just do. Machines talk to me somehow. I can see how they work inside my head." The adult fighter studied Jinwoo for a long moment. Many people had noticed the boy's strange gift with technology. Even broken Vorthak equipment seemed to respond to his touch. Some said it was impossible. Others whispered it might be humanity's secret weapon. "All right," Hyunwoo decided. "But if anything goes wrong, you run. Take Nari and get as far away as possible." Jinwoo nodded and squeezed his sister's hand. "Wait here. I will be back soon." He slipped out of the building and moved along the shadows. The ground was covered with rubble that cut his knees as he crawled. Above him, the Vorthak guards clicked to each other in their harsh language. When he reached the power junction, Jinwoo placed his hands on the metal surface. Immediately, he could feel the energy flowing through the circuits. It was like touching the heartbeat of the building. his mind filled with understanding of voltage levels and connection points. Working quickly, he pulled wires from his pocket. Hyunwoo had taught him basic sabotage techniques, but Jinwoo's natural instincts guided him better than any training. He connected two high-voltage lines that should never touch each other. Sparks flew, and the building went dark. Emergency alarms started wailing. The guards shouted in confusion and ran toward the power station, but something went wrong. As Jinwoo tried to crawl away, his foot got caught in the debris. The sharp metal cut deep into his ankle. He cried out in pain without thinking. The sound carried across the empty street. One of the Vorthak guards heard it and came running. The alien's red eyes swept the area until they found Jinwoo lying trapped in the rubble. "Human child," the guard called to his partner. "Small but dangerous like the others." More soldiers arrived quickly. They pulled Jinwoo from the debris and dragged him to the center of the street. Hyunwoo tried to help, but laser fire drove him back. From their hiding place, Nari screamed her brother's name. Within minutes, a larger group of Vorthak surrounded them. Among them walked a figure that made Jinwoo's blood turn cold. Commander Thexaval was taller than the other aliens with silver markings on his gray skin. His forearms moved in precise gestures as he examined the damaged depot. "This child did this?" asked Thexval in broken human words. "Yes, Commander. The power systems were disabled with great skill. Too much skill for such a young human." Thexval knelt down and stared at Jinwoo with glowing eyes. The alien's face showed something, like curiosity mixed with hunger. "Interesting. This little creature understands our technology better than most adult humans. How is this possible?" Jinwoo said nothing, but his defiant stare seemed to amuse the commander. "Take him to Research Station Omega-7, Thexval ordered. And bring the female child as well. She may be useful for controlling this one's behavior." Soldiers grabbed both children despite Jinwoo's struggles. As they were dragged toward the transport ship, Thexaval spoke again. "Do not harm them yet. This infant dragon may provide valuable information about human capabilities. I want to study how long their spirit takes to break under proper conditions." The last thing Jinwoo saw was Hyunwoo's anguished face watching from the ruins as the ship lifted off. Earth shrank below them until it became just another point of light in the darkness. He did not know that 70 long years would pass before he saw home again. The cell walls were smooth white metal that reflected nothing. Jinwoo had been staring at them for what felt like forever, but he knew it had only been 3 months. Time moved strangely in this place with no windows and no way to tell day from night. Research Station Omega-7 floated somewhere in deep space. Commander Thexval had designed this prison specifically for studying human psychology. The room was exactly 10 feet by 10 feet. Not big enough to run, but not small enough to make someone crazy right away. At least that was what the aliens thought. Jinwoo sat on the hard metal bed and counted the microscopic scratches on the wall. He had found 147 so far. Each tiny mark told him something about the metal composition and how the walls were built. The food came through a slot in the wall 3 times every day. Gray paste that tasted like nothing. But Jinwoo had noticed something interesting. Sometimes the paste contained tiny metal fragments, pieces so small that normal humans would never see them. He collected these fragments carefully. During the long hours when nothing happened, he would arrange them on his palm and study their structure. His strange gift with machines helped him understand what they were. Parts of microcircuits, broken pieces of alien technology. Most prisoners would have ignored such tiny scraps. Jinwoo saw them as tools. On the wall across from his bed, a holographic display showed images from Earth. Commander Thexval wanted him to see humanity's suffering, cities burning, humans in work camps, mass graves where millions were buried. The worst images showed his sister Nari. The holograms claimed she was dead, killed while trying to escape from a labor camp. They showed her small body lying still on cold ground. Jinwoo cried for days when he first saw those images. But slowly he began to notice small details that seemed wrong. The lighting was not quite right. Nari's hair was the wrong length. The wounds did not match how Vorthak weapons actually worked. The images were fake, which meant his sister might still be alive. This discovery changed everything for Jinwoo. If the aliens needed to lie, to him then they were afraid of something. Maybe afraid of what he might do if he kept hope alive. Years passed in the white cell. Jinwoo grew from a small boy into a teenager and then into a young man. His body stayed thin from the poor food, but his mind grew stronger every day. He created games to keep himself sane, memory exercises where he would rebuild entire machines in his head, mathematical puzzles using the scratch patterns on the walls, language lessons where he tried to decode alien writing from the symbols on his food slot. But his most important work was almost invisible. Using the tiny metal fragments from his food, Jinwoo began building something extraordinary. A microscopic communication device that could tap into the station's electrical systems. The work took years because he could only use pieces smaller than dust grains. His fingernails became his main tools. He would scrape fragments into thin wires and bend them into complex shapes. Drop by drop, he collected moisture from the air to create primitive batteries. Hair from his head became insulation for delicate connections. The aliens never suspected anything because they could not see what he was doing. Their scanners looked for obvious weapons and escape tools. They never thought to look for something built from fragments too small for their instruments to detect. By his 25th birthday, Jinwoo had created a working transmitter. It was hidden inside a tooth that he had carefully hollowed out over months of painful work. The range was tiny, but it could reach the station's internal communication network. That was when he made his first contact with the outside universe. Deep in the station's data systems, Jinwoo found traces of other signals. Other humans were sending messages across space, not just survivors hiding on Earth, but humans who had escaped to distant stars. They were building new colonies and fighting back against the Vorthak Empire. More importantly, he found evidence that resistance groups were still active. They had been sending coded messages for years trying to locate missing humans, including messages specifically asking about a boy named Jinwoo Park and a girl named Nari Park. Someone was looking for them. Someone still cared. Jinwoo spent the next 10 years learning how to send his own messages without being detected. He had to be incredibly careful because discovery would mean death. Each transmission lasted only microseconds and used power borrowed from the station's own systems. Slowly, he built a network of contacts, humans on dozens of different worlds who were willing to help each other survive. He became a coordinator and information broker, even though no one knew his real name or location. Through this secret network, Jinwoo learned the truth about what was happening in the galaxy. Humanity was not dying. They were spreading. Every time the Vorthak destroyed one human settlement, 3 more would appear somewhere else. Every failed colony ship led to better designs and stronger survivors. Most amazing of all, he learned that his sister Nari was not only alive, but had become a leader in the resistance movement. She was now called General Park and commanded ships, full of human fighters who struck at Vorthak targets across multiple star systems. The fake images of her death had been meant to break his spirit. Instead, they had motivated him to become something the aliens never expected. By age 40, Jinwoo was the secret center of the largest intelligence network in human space. Information flowed through him from hundreds of sources. Resistance cells planned their attacks based on data he provided. New colonies chose their locations using maps he helped create. The Vorthak still saw him as a broken prisoner in a white cell. They had no idea that their greatest enemy was sitting right under their noses, but Jinwoo was patient. He had learned that patience was humanity's greatest weapon. While aliens thought in terms of quick victories, humans could plan for decades or centuries. They could endure suffering that would drive other species insane. Every day he pretended to be defeated. He stared at the walls with empty eyes when the guards checked on him. He ate their terrible food without complaint. He showed no reaction to their psychological torture. Inside his mind, he was building something that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. On his 50th birthday, Jinwoo sent a message to his sister through the hidden network. Just 5 words that took months to transmit safely. Still alive. Still fighting. Still coming. 20 more years would pass before he could keep that promise. But Jinwoo Park had learned something that terrified his captors once they finally understood it. Sometimes, the most dangerous dragon is the one that appears to be sleeping. Dr. So-Young Lee walked through the corridors of Research Station Omega-7 with heavy steps. Her hands shook slightly as she carried the datapad containing her new assignment. After 15 years of working for the Vorthok, she thought she had seen everything. But this case was different. She was being asked to examine a human prisoner who had been held in isolation for 70 years. The longest psychological torture experiment in galactic history. The subject was expected to be completely insane by now. So-Young had been forced to work for the aliens when they captured her family during the conquest of Earth. Her husband and daughter were held on a prison planet as insurance for her cooperation. She hated herself for helping the Vorthak, but she could not let her loved ones die. The corridor ended at a massive security door. Commander Thexval stood waiting with 2 guards. His red eyes glowed with excitement as he saw her approach. Dr. Lee, you are here to witness the conclusion of my greatest experiment. This human child has been isolated for 7 decades. Mine should be completely broken by now. What do you want me to do? So-Young asked quietly. Enter his cell. Examine his mental state. Document how human psychology breaks down under extended isolation. Your report will help us control the remaining human populations more effectively. The door opened with a hiss of escaping air. Inside was a white room exactly 10 feet square. On a metal bed sat a man who looked to be about 80 years old. His hair was completely gray and his face was lined with wrinkles, but his dark eyes were sharp and alert. So-Young stepped inside and the door sealed behind her. She had expected to find a gibbering madman. Instead, the prisoner looked at her with calm intelligence and spoke in a clear voice. Hello, Dr. So-Young Lee. Your daughter Minha is safe on colony ship Perseus 7. I have been watching over her through friends in the Resistance Network. The datapad fell from So-Young's hands and clattered on the metal floor. It was impossible. Her daughter was supposed to be on a prison planet light years away. How could this isolated prisoner know anything about her location? Who are you? She whispered. My name is Jinwoo Park. I was 12 years old when they brought me here. That was 70 years ago. I have been waiting a very long time for someone, like you, to visit. So-Young looked around the empty cell in confusion. There were no communication devices, no computers, no way for anyone to send or receive messages. The Vorthak had designed this prison to prevent all outside contact. How do you know about my daughter? How do you know anything about what happens outside this room? Jinwoo smiled sadly. The Vorthak made a mistake when they built this place. They thought isolation would break human spirits. Instead, it taught me patience. And patience gave me time to build something they never suspected. He opened his mouth and used his tongue to push something small from behind his teeth. A tiny device no bigger than a grain of rice fell into his palm. 70 years of collecting metal fragments from my food, 70 years of careful construction. This transmitter connects to the station's power grid and lets me communicate with the galaxy beyond these walls. So-Young stared at the microscopic device in amazement. That is impossible. Something so small could not have enough range to reach other star systems. Not directly, but it can reach the station's communication array. From there, I learned to bounce signals off passing ships. and space debris. It took decades to build a network, but eventually I made contact with human colonies across the galaxy. She sat down heavily on the floor as the implications hit her. You have been in communication with the outside world this entire time, not just communication. Coordination. For the last 40 years, I have been helping plan resistance operations from this cell. Strike missions, colony evacuations, supply routes. The Vorthak think I am their broken prisoner. Actually, I am one of their most dangerous enemies. The old man's eyes grew bright with inner fire. Your daughter escaped from the prison transport 3 years ago. My friends in the resistance arranged it. She is now studying engineering on a human colony ship. She thinks about you every day and hopes you are still alive. Tears ran down So-Young's face. She had not seen her daughter in 15 years. The Vorthak had told her that Minha was being held as a worker on a mining planet. Learning that her child was free and safe felt like a miracle. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I need your help, and because I think you are ready to stop working for the beings who destroyed our world." Jinwoo stood up from the bed and walked to the wall. He pressed his hand against what looked like smooth metal. But So-Young could see now that the surface was covered with incredibly tiny scratches, patterns too small for alien eyes to notice. These walls contain 70 years of planning. Every mark is part of a larger design. Maps of Vorthak military positions, weaknesses in their technology, communication codes for resistance cells. Everything needed to coordinate a galaxy-wide uprising. An uprising, So-Young repeated in shock. The Vorthak believe they have conquered humanity. They think we are scattered and broken. They have no idea that human colonies now exist on over 300 worlds, or that we have been preparing for this moment for decades. Jinwoo turned back to face her. Despite his age and the long years of imprisonment, he stood straight and strong. His voice carried absolute confidence. "I am ready to leave this cell, Dr. Lee, but not to escape, to lead. My people have been waiting 70 years for their dragon to wake up. The time has finally come." He held out the tiny transmitter. "One message from this device will signal resistance cells across the galaxy. Within hours, the Vorthak Empire will face coordinated attacks on dozens of fronts. But first, I need to get out of this room." So-Young looked at the device, and then at the man who had endured 7 decades of torture without breaking. She thought about her daughter living free among the stars. She thought about all the years she had spent helping humanity's enemies. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Jinwoo smiled. For the first time in 70 years, it was a smile of genuine hope. "Help me show the galaxy what happens when you lock away an infant dragon for too long. Help me prove that patience is humanity's secret weapon. Help me teach the Vorthak why they should have killed me when they had the chance." Outside the cell, Commander Thexaval waited impatiently for Dr. Lee's report. He expected to hear about a broken mind and a defeated spirit. He had no idea he was about to witness the awakening of humanity's greatest weapon. The escape from Research Station Omega-7 happened exactly as Jinwoo had planned. Dr. So-Young Lee activated the emergency medical alarm, claiming the prisoner was having heart problems. When Commander Thexval and his guards rushed into the cell, they found Jinwoo collapsed on the floor. But it was a trick. As soon as the door opened, Jinwoo sent his signal through the hidden transmitter. One tiny pulse of energy that bounced from the station to passing ships to communication relays across the galaxy. Within minutes, responses began flooding back. Acknowledgement signals from resistance cells on dozens of worlds. The message was simple, but its meaning was enormous. The dragon was awake. While the Vorthak guards tried to revive what they thought was a dying old man, Jinwoo was actually coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Through his microtransmitter, he could hear status reports from across the galaxy. Captain Woo Jin Choi confirmed that Strike Fleet Alpha was in position near the Vorthak homeworld. Engineer Yoonji Han reported that sabotage teams had infiltrated 3 major shipyards. Commander Tae-hyun Yoon announced that ground forces were ready to attack key installations. All of them had been waiting for this signal for years. The real. Escape began when So-young injected Thexval with a sedative disguised as medicine for treating humans. As the alien commander collapsed, she grabbed his access cards and weapons. Jinwoo stood up from the floor, moving with surprising speed for an 80-year-old man. "Time to go," he said calmly. "My ride should be here in about 10 minutes." They ran through corridors filled with alarms and flashing lights. Other Vorthak. Scientists scattered in panic as news of the prisoner escape spread. But Jinwoo moved through the station like he had studied its layout for decades, which in fact he had through careful analysis of power flows and communication patterns. At the docking bay, a small ship waited with engines running. The pilot was a young human woman with determined eyes and familiar features. When she saw Jinwoo, her face broke into a huge smile. "Hello, brother," said General Nari Park. Jinwoo stopped walking and stared at his sister in amazement. The last time he saw her, she had been 8 years old. Now she was a grown woman of 78, wearing the uniform of the United Human Resistance. Gray hair showed beneath her military cap, but her eyes still held the same spark he remembered. "Nari, you came for me. I have been planning this rescue for 20 years. But we had to wait until the time was right, until you were ready to lead us." They embraced quickly before running up the ship's boarding ramp. As their craft lifted off from the station, Jinwoo could see Vorthak fighters trying to intercept them. But explosions were already blooming across the station's surface as hidden charges destroyed key systems. "The Resistance knew where I was all this time?" Jinwoo asked as they escaped into hyperspace. Nari nodded with a sad expression. "We tracked you to Omega-7 within 5 years of your capture. But rescuing you earlier would have compromised everything. The galaxy needed time to prepare for what comes next." Jinwoo felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief that his people had not forgotten him. Anger that he could have been freed decades earlier. But as reports flooded in from across human space, he began to understand the scope of what his sacrifice had made possible. While he spent 70 years in a cell, the human species had transformed itself. Small groups of survivors had become vast hidden colonies. Scattered refugees had become organized military forces. Most importantly, they had learned to think and plan on timescales that other species could not imagine. "Show me what we have built," Jinwoo said quietly. The next few hours were overwhelming as Jinwoo learned about the galaxy he had helped create through his secret network. Human populations now existed on over 400 worlds. Advanced colonies with populations in the millions. Secret shipyards producing vessels designed with technology stolen from the Vorthak. But the most amazing revelation was how thoroughly humans had infiltrated their enemies. Dr. So-young Lee was just one of thousands of human collaborators who had been secretly working for the Resistance. They held positions in Vorthak research facilities, military commands, and government centers throughout the Empire. "We call it the long game," Nari explained. "While the Vorthak thought they were controlling us, we were actually learning everything about them, their technology, their weaknesses, their command structure, information that you helped coordinate from your prison cell." The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Humans had pretended to be defeated while actually growing stronger. They had accepted slavery while secretly building the tools of liberation. Most importantly, they had learned to be patient in ways that amazed even themselves. As news of Jinwoo's escape spread, the galaxy erupted into coordinated chaos. On the industrial world of Vorthak Prime, massive explosions destroyed the main shipyards. Critical supply lines were cut by precisely timed sabotage operations. Communication networks went dark as human hackers activated viruses they had been placing for decades. But the most shocking development came when entire Vorthak military units suddenly turned their weapons on their own forces. These were not human infiltrators, but actual aliens who had been recruited as double agents over many years of patient work. "How did you convince Vorthak soldiers to betray their own people?" Jinwoo asked in amazement. "We showed them what their empire really was," Nari replied. "Many Vorthak are not evil. They were just following orders from leaders who enjoyed causing pain. When they learned the truth about the concentration camps and mass murders, some of them chose to help us instead." Within 12 hours of Jinwoo's escape, the Vorthak Empire was collapsing on multiple fronts. But the most important battle was yet to come. Admiral Dongyun Park, Nari's husband, led the main human fleet toward the Vorthak homeworld. His ships were built using advanced designs that Jinwoo had helped develop by analyzing alien technology for 7 decades. They were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Vorthak possessed. The final space battle lasted only 3 hours. Human fighters swarmed through Vorthak formations like angry insects. Weapons that had once seemed invincible were destroyed by tactics developed in secret over many years. When the Vorthak home fleet was defeated, their government sent a desperate message offering complete surrender. They had finally realized what they were facing. Not a primitive species seeking revenge, but a highly advanced civilization that had used apparent weakness as camouflage while preparing for total victory. Standing on the bridge of the flagship, Liberation Jinwoo watched the alien homeworld grow larger on the main screen. After 70 years in a white cell, he was finally seeing the heart of the empire that had destroyed his childhood. "What happens now?" he asked his sister. Nari looked at him with pride and sadness mixed together. "Now we decide what kind of people we want to be, whether we become conquerors like they were or something better." Jinwoo nodded slowly. The hardest battles were still ahead. Not against external enemies, but against the darkness that long suffering had created in human hearts. The infant dragon had awakened, but the real test would be proving that 70 years of pain had made humanity wiser, rather than simply more dangerous. 6 months after the Great Awakening, Jinwoo Park stood in the ruins of Seoul, looking at what remained of his childhood home. The building was just a pile of broken concrete and twisted metal. Weeds grew through cracks in the foundation where his family had once lived and laughed together. The Vorthak Empire had surrendered completely, but victory felt hollow. Earth was mostly empty now. Billions of humans had died during the occupation. Those who survived had scattered to colony worlds across the galaxy. The blue planet that gave birth to humanity had become a graveyard. "The memorial service is tomorrow," Nari said softly as she joined him in the rubble. "People are coming from dozens of worlds to honor the dead." Jinwoo nodded but did not speak. Since his release from the white cell, he had struggled with feelings that 70 years of isolation had not prepared him for. Joy at seeing his sister alive, pride in humanity's victory, but also a terrible emptiness that no amount of success could fill. Therapist Ji-young Nam had been working with him for months, trying to help him adjust to freedom. She explained that his mind had adapted to captivity in ways that made normal life difficult. Simple things like crowds of people or unexpected sounds could trigger panic attacks. But the hardest part was connecting with other humans. 70 years of thinking in decades and centuries had changed how Jinwoo saw the world. While others celebrated quick victories, he saw long-term problems. While they enjoyed the moment, he worried about consequences that might not appear for generations. "You saved our entire species," Ji-young had told him during their last session. "But saving yourself may be even harder." The irony was painful. The infant dragon had become humanity's greatest hero, but felt more isolated than ever. In his cell, he had dreamed of freedom and human companionship. Now that he had both, they felt strange and uncomfortable. A message arrived on his communication device from Admiral Donghyun Park. The final Vorthak stronghold had been captured. The last alien military forces had surrendered. After 73 years of war, humanity had achieved total victory, but victory brought its own problems. On the former, Vorthak homeworld, human soldiers were discovering the full extent of alien crimes. Mass graves containing millions of bodies. Research facilities where prisoners had been tortured in the name of science. Children's camps where young aliens had been taught to hate and kill other species. The evidence was overwhelming. The Vorthak Empire had been built on systematic cruelty that made human suffering look small by comparison. They had committed genocide against dozens of species before ever reaching Earth. Now the question was what to do with the surviving Vorthak population. Many humans wanted revenge. They had lost families and friends and homeworlds to alien violence. They demanded that every Vorthak be executed or enslaved as payment for their crimes, but others argued for mercy. The aliens who surrendered included many who had opposed their government's policies. Scientists who had refused to participate in torture. Soldiers who had protected civilian populations. Teachers who had tried to educate their children about peace instead of war. The decision would ultimately rest with the new United Human Federation. But everyone looked to Jinwoo for guidance, the man who had suffered most and sacrificed longest, the dragon who had waited 70 years for this moment. Standing in the ruins of Seoul, Jinwoo thought about a conversation he had with a young Vorthak prisoner named Kexvol. The alien was barely adult and had never participated in any crimes against humans, but his species' history made him a target for human anger. "Why should you live?" Jinwoo had asked during the interrogation. "Your people destroyed my world and killed my parents." Kexvol had looked at him with large, frightened eyes. "I do not know. I was not born when those things happened. I never hurt anyone. But if you decide I must die for the crimes of others, I will not resist." The young alien's acceptance of collective punishment reminded Jinwoo of something important. During the darkest days of human slavery, some people had blamed all humans for the actions of collaborators. They had wanted to punish innocent children for their parents' cooperation with the enemy, but Jinwoo had never accepted that logic. Individual humans were responsible for their own choices. Collective punishment was the philosophy of oppressors, not liberators. A new message arrived on his device. This one was from President Seo-hyun Lim of the Provisional Government, asking him to address the Federation Council. They wanted his recommendation on how to deal with the Vorthak population. Jinwoo closed his eyes and thought about the White Cell, where he had spent most of his life. The hatred he had felt for his captors. The dreams of revenge that had kept him sane during the darkest years. The satisfaction he had expected to feel when the aliens finally paid for their crimes. But standing in the ruins of his childhood home, he felt something different. Not satisfaction, but sadness. Not triumph, but emptiness. Revenge could not bring back the dead or undo 70 years of suffering. A small sound made him open his eyes. A child was walking through the rubble, picking up pieces of broken metal. The boy looked to be about 12 years old, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. He reminded Jinwoo painfully of himself at that age. "What are you doing?" Jinwoo asked gently. The child looked up with excitement. "I am collecting materials to build something. My teacher says humans can make wonderful things from broken pieces if we are patient and clever." "What is your name?" "Young-ho." "Song. I live on colony ship New Hope. We came here to see where humanity began before the bad times." Young-ho held up a twisted piece of alien technology that had been buried in the debris. "Do you know what this is? It looks like part of a communication device." Jinwoo examined the fragment carefully. His gift for understanding machines was still strong despite his age. The piece was indeed from a Vorthak transmitter, but it had been modified in an unusual way. This was used by the Resistance, he realized. Someone took alien technology and changed it to help humans communicate in secret. "That is amazing," Young-ho said with wonder. Even when everything was broken, people found ways to build new things. The boy's words hit Jinwoo like lightning. Even when everything was broken, People found ways to build new things. That was the real lesson of the last 70 years. Not that humans were good at destroying their enemies, but that they were good at creating something better from the wreckage. Jinwoo knelt down and placed his hand on Young-ho's shoulder. "Would you like to help me with an important project?" "What kind of project?" "Building a future where children like you never have to be afraid of aliens or humans or anyone else. A galaxy where different species learn to work together instead of fighting." Young-ho's eyes lit up with the same fire that had once driven a 12-year-old boy to disable Vorthak power systems. "How do we do that?" Jinwoo smiled for the first time in months, a real smile full of hope and purpose. "Very carefully, with great patience, and by remembering that the best way to defeat enemies is to turn them into friends." That evening, he sent his recommendation to the Federation Council. 3 simple words that would shape the future of galactic civilization. Choose. Mercy, build better. 3 years had passed since the end of the Great War, and the galaxy looked completely different. Where once there had been the cruel Vorthak Empire, now stretched the United Species Federation. Humans and aliens worked together on projects that would have been impossible for either group alone. Jinwoo Park stood in his classroom on the orbital station New Beginning, watching his students work on their final projects. Half of them were human children from various colony worlds. The other half were young Vorthak, who had volunteered to study human engineering methods. At 85 years old, Jinwoo moved more slowly than he once did, but his mind remained sharp. Teaching had given him a purpose that felt more important than commanding fleets or planning strategies. He was helping to build the generation that would inherit this new galaxy. "Professor Park," called out his student Min Seo Kang. The 16-year-old human girl was working on a design for improved, faster-than-light communication systems. "I think I found a way to boost signal strength by 30%. Jinwoo walked over to examine her work. The design was brilliant, combining human intuition with alien mathematical precision. It represented everything he hoped the future would become. Different species learning from each other instead of trying to destroy each other. "Excellent work, Minseo. Your design could help colony ships stay in contact across much greater distances." At the next table, a young Vorthak named Zephys was struggling with a mechanical puzzle. Unlike his warlike ancestors, this alien had 4 arms but a gentle personality. He looked up at Jinwoo with large, worried eyes. "I cannot make the pieces fit together, Professor. Maybe I am not smart enough for engineering." "Intelligence is not about solving puzzles quickly," Jinwoo said kindly. "It is about not giving up when things seem impossible. Some of my best work took decades to complete." He sat down beside Zephys and showed him a different approach to the problem. "Try thinking about it from the inside out instead of the outside in." Working together, they soon had the mechanism functioning perfectly. Zephys clicked his mandibles in the Vorthak equivalent of laughter. "Thank you, Professor. You are very patient with us." "Patience is humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy," Jinwoo replied. "We learned it the hard way." After class ended, Jinwoo walked to his office where President Seo-hyun Lim was waiting with several important-looking documents. The leader of the United Species Federation visited regularly to ask his advice on major decisions. "We have a problem, Jinwoo," she said seriously. "The Dakari Imperium has sent raiders into our territory again. 3 colony ships were attacked last week. The Federation Council wants to respond with military force. The Dakari were a warrior species from the Galactic Rim who refused to accept the new peaceful order. They saw the alliance between humans and former Vorthak as weakness to be exploited. Their attacks were becoming bolder and more frequent." "What does Admiral Park recommend?" Jinwoo asked. "Nari wants to send a battle fleet to their homeworld. Show them that we are not defenseless. But that could start another galactic war." Jinwoo studied the attack reports carefully. The Dakari were proud fighters, but not particularly clever tacticians. They relied on overwhelming force rather than strategy. More importantly, they had never encountered humans who fought with patience. and long-term planning. Send them a message, he said finally. Tell them we want to meet and discuss a peaceful solution. President Lim looked surprised. They will see that as surrender. It might encourage more attacks. Let them think what they want. Arrange the meeting on a neutral world. Make sure there are lots of observers from other species. And bring Ambassador Kyung-ho Bae. His diplomatic skills will be important. 2 weeks later, the meeting took place on a space station orbiting an uninhabited star system. The Dakari delegation arrived in massive warships bristling with weapons. Their leader was a fierce warrior named Grimark, who had never lost a battle. The human delegation came in a single small ship. Besides Ambassador Bae, they brought only Jinwoo and a few assistants. To outside observers, it looked like sheep negotiating with wolves. Grimark towered over the humans with his 8-foot height and muscular build. His species had natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. You humans defeated the Vorthak through trickery and cowardice. Now you hide behind them like children behind their parents. We Dakari respect only strength. Submit to our rule or face the consequences. I understand your position, Jinwoo replied calmly. But I think you misunderstand ours. We are not weak. We are patient. There is a difference. Patience is just another word for fear, old man. You fear to fight us because you know we are stronger. Jinwoo smiled sadly. I spent 70 years in a prison cell learning patience. During that time, I helped coordinate the liberation of an entire galaxy. Patience is not weakness. It is the ability to wait for exactly the right moment to act. He activated a holographic display showing the locations of Dakari military bases. For example, we have been patiently placing observers near all of your installations for the past 6 months. We know exactly where your fleets are positioned. The display updated to show Dakari troop movements and supply lines, information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. We also know that your people are facing food shortages because your homeworld's climate is changing. Your warriors are brave, but they cannot fight starvation. You need our agricultural technology, but pride prevents you from asking for help. Grimark's confident expression began to waver. How do you know these things? Because patience teaches you to watch and listen before acting. We studied your people the same way we studied the Vorthak. Not to conquer you, but to understand you. Jinwoo stood up slowly and walked around the conference table. Despite his age and small size, his presence filled the room. Here is what we propose, Grimark. Your people join our federation as equal partners. We share our farming technology to help feed your worlds. In return, your warriors help protect colony ships from pirates and raiders. You would trust us with such responsibility after we attacked your people. Trust must begin somewhere. We choose to begin with faith in your honor rather than fear of your weapons. The negotiations continued for 3 days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Dakari had expected to face frightened enemies. Instead, they found confident allies, offering exactly what their people needed most. When the treaty was signed, Grimark approached Jinwoo privately. I do not understand humans. We attacked you, but you offer friendship. Why? Because 70 years ago, I was a 12-year-old boy who hated aliens with all his heart. That hatred kept me alive, but it also poisoned my soul. Only when I learned to forgive did I become truly free. 6 months later, Jinwoo stood in the cemetery on Earth where his parents were buried. The small holographic device he carried contained the complete story of humanity's journey from slavery to galactic leadership. Every victory and defeat, every lesson learned through suffering and sacrifice. Nari stood beside him along with her, children and grandchildren. The family that had been scattered by war was finally together again. 3 generations united by love and shaped by the wisdom that comes from surviving impossible odds. Do you think they would be proud? Nari asked. Softly, Jinwoo activated the holographic recorder and placed it on his parents' shared gravestone. Images began playing showing human colony ships working alongside former enemies, children of different species learning together in integrated schools, scientists collaborating on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. I think they would be amazed, he said. We started as a primitive species on one small world. Now we help guide the destiny of thousands of civilizations. As the sun set over the rebuilt city of Seoul, Jinwoo thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. From a frightened child hiding in underground tunnels to an old man watching over the peaceful galaxy he had helped create. The infant dragon had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies, but showing them a better way to live. In his final years, Jinwoo Park became known throughout the galaxy simply as Teacher, the man who had turned 70 years of suffering into wisdom that would guide civilization for generations to come. The dragon had awakened not to destroy, but to build. And in building, he had found the peace that no amount of revenge could ever provide.